Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Mr. Manuel, or Chairman, let me go to you first, if I may. On your water settlement issue, can you shed some light on what normally happens if there's a settlement is the administration requests, that's what we have to sort of trigger the action. Is there any particular reason that you're aware of why they haven't included the settlement costs? Because that's very legitimate.
My understanding was that there were some monies put in at the local level within the state. And so they're utilizing those monies. And their projections that BLM made was that it will last for quite some time. But they were estimating on the usage from the nation, how much water we're going to utilize of the 66,000 acres that we got. And at that time, we were only utilizing around 16,000 acres per year. So they estimated that it's going to take a long time before they run out of funding. Mm-hmm. But the nation came back and started utilizing, and they utilized 100% of the water. So when we increased the water usage, it increased the cost. So they came back and they estimated it's going to take run out of water by 2017 at the rate we're using the water, which is 100%. And so they started looking at other sources of funding as to how they can come up with the monies. And they're looking at using less water from the Colorado River, which is what we've done. We've had to cut down on the usage of our water because some of that water we also store because it's just running down the river and somebody else is using it. So we started to store it so we can get some credits on it. And that's one of the reasons why. So we had to reduce our storage cut down our usage on the Colorado River. But still, we're still going to run out of water. So we've been asking the Bureau, why haven't you gone back and asked for that additional funding that's there? And it hasn't happened yet.
We'll put an inquiry into that. Governor, you're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman, members of the subcommittee, for this opportunity to testify before you regarding FY17 federal budget. My name is J. Michael Chavria, I serve as governor for Santa Clara Pueblo. As the subcommittee works on the FY17 Interior Appropriations budget, I would urge your continued commitment to fulfilling the federal trust responsibility. In very important ways, this subcommittee is empowered to do the most in regards by providing adequate funding to meet the basic needs of Indian country. We appreciate that the subcommittee has sought an increase in Indian programs levels over the recent years. In 2011, the Pueblo was devastated by the Las Conchas fire. 80% of our forest lands, our spiritual sanctuary, our pharmacy, our clothing store, our grocery store, and biological classroom was impacted. Today in 2016, we still continue to face that imminent threat of flooding. Per the Army Corps of Engineers Technical Assistance Report, on any given day during the monsoon season, which is from July, August, and September, we face a 1% chance of a 100-year flood. Pre-fire, it was estimated at 5,640 cubic feet per second. Now that all the vegetation is burned off, the same 100-year flood, we face an estimated 21,000 cubic feet per second flood event. On any given day, our creek is only as wide as the table and flows between 5 to 7 cubic feet per second. So a large jump from 5,600 to 21,000 will do a lot of devastating impacts to our community. Due to the high severity of the burn, there was a dramatic reduction in the infiltration rates within the burn area. This has resulted in a 4 to 8-fold increased runoff and sediment and debris flow in the Santa Clara Creek, posing a severe threat to lives and safety of the Pueblo of Santa Clara, and increasing the potential of widespread flooding and property damage within our community. The channel through Santa Clara has lost its conveyance capacity necessary to safely pass large post-fire flows. Hundreds of residential areas, as well as several public structures, traditional cultural properties are at risk from the flood and debris flows, and if no more action is taken, we face that threat. A very important tool that needs adequate funding is the Tribal Forest Protection Act. This Act allows the Secretaries of Interior and Agriculture to give special consideration to tribally proposed stewardship contract on Forest Service lands and BLM lands that are bordering or adjacent to Indian Trust lands in order to protect the trust resources from fire, disease, and other threats coming off those Forest Service and BLM lands. We understand that the funding for fire suppression activities are costly, so it is important to appropriate funding to implement on-the-ground projects such as hazardous fuel reduction to eliminate the threat of such catastrophic fires from occurring. Santa Clara urges the committee to support the expansion and to fully appropriate funding for this program by both the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Interior. Santa Clara Public continues to seek opportunities to construct a larger, much-needed healthcare facility. The current facility, infrastructure, and equipment are outdated, while at the same time we are serving over 20,000 patients in this undersized facility. As governor, I have lobbied the state of New Mexico for funding and have received $75,000 for creating a utility master plan and received $125,000 for planning and design of a new healthcare facility. We have engaged the philanthropic community to leverage funding and continue to seek federal, state, and non-governmental organizations in funding construction activities. Section 305 of the Indian Healthcare Improvement Act, 25 U.S.C. 1624, authorizes the Indian Health Service to accept major renovations and modernization of Indian health facilities or other healthcare facilities operated by a tribe, and requires the IHS to place that facility on a separate priority list to address the needs of the new facility for personnel and equipment. Again, this comes down to fully appropriating such an authority to meet the needs of our communities. Santa Clara was recently approved as a THPO, a Tribal Historic Preservation Office. However, additional funds, as we assume those responsibilities needs to be allocated. The federal funds have remained stagnant. I encourage that this committee to fully support the historic preservation funds to support those tribes that have assumed these opportunities on behalf of the traditional cultural properties that we are entrusted to protect on and off reservation lands. Santa Clara is a self-governance tribe. We urge this committee to continue fully supporting funding for contracting and compacting opportunities. Self-governance allows the Pueblo to redesign those programs, services, functions, and activities to better fit the needs of our people, our lands, and our resources. It is another opportunity for management and to control our destiny. However, full funding levels are important to continue implementation. The EPA Indian General Assistance Program budget for funds needs to be maintained. It addresses underground storage tanks, illegal dumping, recycling, and other issues. And so we rely on these funding for our core programs, and we strongly urge you to protect GAP from any cuts and indeed to increase funding into the future. As the events in Flint, Michigan demonstrates, local water systems need technical support to protect the health of its community users. EPA drinking water technical assistance programs are an effective tool to help local tribal systems operate safely, develop plans, and train personnel so that these worst-case scenarios can be avoided. Again, in conclusion, in our lifetime, we will never see our traditional or spiritual sanctuary, our Kayan as we have known it to be. It will take generations for our community and our lands to recover from the devastation of these fires, but this is our only homeland. It is the place we have been entrusted since time immemorial. While we intend to devote the resources we can to the healing of our land and the protection of our community, we do not have enough resources. I still haven't found the goose that lays the golden egg or the tree that grows money, and so we have to work together in partnership, in collaboration, and we, in this hour, turn to the need of the federal trustee and ask for your sustained assistance in addressing the many issues in the remediations and mitigations of our sacred homeland. At the same time, we ask Congress not to reduce funding for critical EPA programs like the GAP Fund, as these programs make a significant impact at the local level, and we ask your support as we seek to invest in our healthcare system in partnership with the Indian Health Service. So thank you for the time and opportunity.
Thank you very much, and I'm sure my colleagues would agree. We had testimony yesterday, we had testimony all day today, and it's helpful. But it is amazing how often we hear the same concerns. And by the way, if you find that goose or that tree, let us know. We'll go look for it with you. These are pressing and real problems, and these are all legitimate concerns. The only thing I can tell you is this committee has worked really hard in the bipartisan sense over the last several years to try and push the funding levels up. And sadly, you can't make up in a few years for what is really many decades of neglect, lack of infrastructure, lack of investment, no question about that. But I think every year for the last 5 or 6 years, both the BIA and Indian Health and overall what I'd call Native American, Alaska Native funding has been the biggest area of increase, even when the budget overall was flat, which means we were sort of taking money from other places because we think this is the most important area of our responsibility and jurisdiction. We're probably going to have a flat top line again, would be my guess. We don't have our allocations yet. So we don't know how much money we're going to be in charge of spending. It'll probably be about another month before we know that, I would think, maybe less.
You would know better than I would.
Well, I'm telling you, I don't know, and I've got a committee that I'm in charge of, and I haven't been given a number yet. So I'm sure my friend Mr. Calvert, who chairs this committee, hasn't either. But what I will tell you is, again, these things are priorities to us, and so we'll be trying to figure out ways that we can keep building on the progress of recent years, recognizing that it's not where it needs to be. We agree. If we can, Mr. Martinez, we'll move to you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cole, Ranking Member McCollum, members of the subcommittee. My name is David Martinez. I'm the president of the Raymond Navajo School Board. My community is away from the main Navajo tribe. We're geographically separate. So some of the issues I'm bringing you before you today aren't really normally under education. When we started our school back in 1969, 1970, we had to build all the infrastructure also. So the Raymond Navajo School Board ends up running a health center, a school, and various ancillary programs. So what we're having trouble with now is our water system. We have a bunch of pipes, asbestos, cast iron, and PVC pipes that have been degrading throughout the years. They've been, some of it's due to erosion. They get exposed to the, above the frost line, so they freeze in the winter. And there's also like vehicle traffic that goes under roads and they end up cracking. So we have to end up repairing the roads also. So for that, we're asking for funding in cooperation with IHS for an amount of about $4.6 million to redesign our water system. Our main largest expense would be to asking for $13 million to connect the Raymond Navajo School Board's water system to the Gallup Junction lateral water line project, which is being done in conjunction with the U.S. Department of Interior. I believe they're headed down from Gallup to I think it terminates in Bread Springs, which is about 43 miles from our location. So we'd like to run it in cooperation with the Zuni tribe, through the Zuni tribe to our lands, so we can have that water source, permanent water source. Currently, what we have is a 3,000 foot deep aquifer that we drilled down to. We have two main pumps. One of them is contaminated with heavy metal deposits. And a lot of those heavy metal deposits have been corroding our cast iron pipes, which have a life of between 50 to 70 years. But it's been 42 years and they've been heavily corroded, and that's part of the reason we're getting water failures. Our last request was for to get onto the redesign, renovation, and upgrading our buildings. We had submitted our application. I'm not sure if we completed it fully. At the time, our main concern was like just dilapidated buildings, 42 years worth of buildings, damage and wear and tear. Since then, in November, though, we discovered black mold in our library. And fortunately, it wasn't airborne, so we just sealed off the library, moved all the books over to our building that was renovated in 2011. So our library is now packed into a classroom. And then we also found black mold in our kindergarten. So we moved the kindergarten students also into the elementary, which had black mold previously, and that was addressed. It was completely gutted and refurbished. But what we have now is crowding in the elementary while we try to address these two problems. So what we were trying to ask for is money in the amount of 10 million to get onto the select replacement school construction list, or 10 million to replace it outright on our own through contracts for the library and for the kindergarten building, which are currently unoccupied. And I'd like to thank you for your time, committee.
Thank you for finishing ahead of time. You're a very rare witness. If we can, Mr. Phelps, let me start with you, because this is an area where we've put additional resources and are trying to get to the right place. When did ONAR last provide funding for the Navajo legal services?
2011.
So it's not been that long. And why did you stop providing the funding?
That I don't know. We've been funding it 100% since then.
Okay, and has Navajo Legal Services been able to keep up with the faster pace that the additional money has meant, as hopefully we're bringing these cases to conclusion a little bit quicker than we used to?
Well, I think the appeals process, is very unpredictable, and it, even after ONER closes, we know that we're going to still have to deal with 6 years of those that need to be appealed, and there's time that will still need to play itself out. But as far as projecting how many will actually be done and appealed, I think ONER, based on the last report by OIG, what they said is they've already scheduled all the appeals out. So I guess that's good. That's good that they've planned it out. But what happens as to each appeal, we don't know.
Well, we don't either, obviously, and we were wrestling with that very issue in this committee not too long ago, trying to figure out exactly, who would be obligated to take care of a settlement or an appeal after ONAR was phased out, because hopefully the project's all been completed at some point. But you're satisfied that the legal services end up has been able to keep up. It's just the unpredictability of the process itself.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
I think there's a need for a little higher level of expertise, though, because I think what they're funding is just a court advocate.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much. Very helpful. Ms. McCollum?
No, this was all good. Thank you for bringing to light the schools, and the full testimony that you two gentlemen had is absolutely fabulous. So we broke everything down. So thank you. It's very succinct. Thank you.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for the testimony. Thank you for traveling all this distance. It's very helpful to us. And again, once more, thank you so much for the hospitality when we had the opportunity to visit. It was truly a splendid trip for all of us. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Suzanne Acuna. I'm a school board member at the Blackwater Community School located on the Gila River Indian Community in Arizona. Thank you for this opportunity to testify on the Bureau of Indian Affairs and Bureau of Indian Education fiscal year 2017 budget request. I want to address those sections of the Indian Affairs budget request that we fully support, then discuss those with which we have concerns and recommendations. First, we fully support the Bureau's school construction request for replacement school construction and facilities component replacement. We were one of 10 finalist schools that made a presentation to the selection panel on February 2nd. Our school is a high-achieving school and has met AYP standards since the No Child Left Behind legislation was passed. Our school was constructed for no more than 100 students, but due to home construction in our attendance area, and because we are a school of choice for many parents, our enrollment has grown by more than 85% since 2007. 2007, the Bureau of Indian Education conducted a space analysis survey on our school and determined it was overcrowded by more than 13,000 square feet. The Bureau provided us their written findings and stated the school required a multi-purpose building as well as other education program space that would include classrooms, a cafeteria, and a room for administration. Since that time, we have moved 8 portables onto our campus to address increased enrollment with more than 70% of our students housed on portables. Our square footage need has increased to more than 31,000 square feet. The estimate to construct a new school on our campus is approximately $15 million. We do not understand why we have to wait 8 years to just apply for a new school when the other federal school system receives funding to construct schools. The Department of Defense school system receives federal funds to construct one school costing 5 times the cost of our school. Our Indian children deserve better and deserve to be educated in safe and healthy environments as much as those attending the Department of Defense dependent schools. We fully support the Bureau's request for facilities improvement and repair, as well as their request for tribal grant support costs. We also support the request to increase the education IT fund that could be used to increase broadband rates. The BIE has requested 2 line items of serious concern. One is the request for $8 million for education program management, and the other is for an additional $2 million for education program enhancement. The purpose of these funds is to staff the Bureau's education resource centers. The Bureau has gone through numerous reorganizations and hasn't completed the last one they implemented. We believe schools themselves know best what is needed to improve achievement levels, not distant technical assistance centers. If schools were allowed to plan and receive funding locally to improve student achievement for their individual schools, it would save the government money because schools could procure resources directly that would improve student achievement at their local schools. It would save the government money for recurring costs for salaries and other overhead to maintain federal employee staff and office space and move those funds to the local level where they could be used more efficiently. The Bureau has tried numerous times to reorganize with the hope it will improve student achievement. It is time to try another way that, in our opinion, makes more sense and we believe will actually have some promise of improving learning in BIE-funded schools. We recommend $5 million of the request for education program enhancement and education program management be placed in the ISEP formula for distribution to the schools. Finally, we support the budget increase request for early childhood education. For the past 25 years, the Bureau of Indian Education has implemented a high-quality, research-based 2-generation early childhood program, the Family and Child Education Program. The program includes home visiting, early childhood education for 3- and 4-year-olds, and intensive parent engagement. The FACE program is the only program in the BIE that has longitudinal data to prove its effectiveness. The FACE program currently receives $289,000 per site that provides funding at approximately $3,500 per participant. As a comparison, the federally funded Head Start program receives funding at approximately $10,000 per participant. We request Congress provide funding on par with the Head Start program. To move toward this funding level, we recommend Congress move the other half of the funds requested for education program management and education program enhancement, $5 million to FACE. This will provide each site with $4,653 per participant. We also recommend the Bureau begin to fund early childhood programs universally at all of its schools and integrate it into the ISEP formula. 39 states, such as Oklahoma and Missouri, already have some form of funding for early childhood education in their schools to include some home visiting. Much is known about the positive effects early childhood education has on the long-term impacts of disadvantaged children. It makes sense educationally and as an economic development strategy. We recommend the Bureau move from its intervention model to a prevention model that includes 2-generation early childhood education as its centerpiece. This concludes my testimony. Thank you.
That was a nice way to end up. I couldn't agree with you more on early childhood. Actually, the subcommittee that I chair funds most of the Head Start and early childhood programs, and we were able last year to increase it by over $500 million. I mean, it was a very substantial increase, and something very bipartisan. And, I mean, everybody worked really hard to do that, and I'm from Oklahoma. I've seen the difference that makes. It's very difficult in some ways from a federal standpoint, because when we're supplementing K through 12, or we're doing things for universities, every state has pretty much the same kind of basic system, but early childhood is all over. We have 10 states, as you pointed out in your testimony, really, that really have no programs at all, don't do a single thing. So the federal government, through Head Start, is really the biggest de facto early childhood, which is not what we normally do. It's usually a state and local function, but this is one where we've probably taken more of the lead than anybody else, but it's been, I think, I agree with you, money well spent. Other point I just want to make, Mr. Chavez, and I think a number of you mentioned the problem with roads, and boy, we hear that again and again, and this is the product of just decades of neglect in terms of basic infrastructure. So many of these things, in Oklahoma, where we have 39 different tribal nations, we don't have any reservations, and that was not a good thing, and particularly in the manner in which my family still owns the last of our allotment land, and our tribes can put land into trust. But the one good thing about it is, because Indian land became open to everybody, the roads are pretty much the same, broadband access. You have all that basic infrastructure that, frankly, so many of our reservations simply don't have, because the federal government never made the promised investments out there. And that's something we can't wave a magic wand and fix overnight, but it is interesting how often it comes up in different contexts. We'll talk about law enforcement. Well, it takes forever to get there, and we can't send backup, and then we'll talk about education, as you did, and we'll talk about the dangers of moving children over roads, or the difficulties that causes for equipment, and we can go on and on. But there are just certain things people have to live. To have a decent functioning community, and federal government for generations did not make the promised investments there, and that's the biggest single reason, it seems to me, for the gap between Indian country and the rest of the country, is that the investment wasn't equally shared and spread around. So, but we thank you for your good work, and very much thank you for your testimony. It's very, very helpful to all of us. And with that, let me go to my ranking member. Yeah, I do. I want to add, if I may, to Ms. McCollum's point. A couple of years ago, we literally weren't getting any proposals for any new schools one year. And this committee just erupted, because we all knew what the backlog and the needs were. And to the administration's credit, they listened to that, and we put additional money in that year beyond what they asked for, and now they're coming back with more aggressive proposals. I think that's a very, very good thing. We'll see where we end up, but we're going to do everything we can. Also, I just want to mention again, we wouldn't have had this hearing if my good friend Chairman Calvert, we're on a very abbreviated hearing schedule this year, but we thought as a committee, and my friend Ms. McCollum and I visited with the chairman, that we need these sessions. They are very, very helpful to the committee and building the record and the testimony. And I want to thank each and every one of you for traveling, in many cases, a very long way to come and give us the benefit of your insight and your experience and your firsthand knowledge of the things we need to get done. There's only two groups of children that we really have a direct responsibility to educate as a federal government. One of them are military children, as Ms. McCollum mentioned. The others are Native American, where there's a special trust responsibility. It normally falls to state and localities, but here, and the federal government needs to be part of that too. I mean, we care about every kid in the country, but we have a unique responsibility to Native Americans and to children on military facilities whose parents are protecting all of us. So as my good friend from Minnesota pointed out, we did a pretty good thing a couple of years ago in terms of those schools. We need to do something like that here, where we can recapitalize what's been a chronically underfunded system, and do it in a reasonable time period instead of picking away. Not sure exactly how we'll get there, but we are trying to work through that problem right now. But again, thank all of you for coming. This concludes our last of 4 public witness hearings regarding the fiscal year 2017 budget for the American Indian and Alaska Native programs under the jurisdiction of the Interior and Environment Appropriations Subcommittee. I want to thank again all of the distinguished tribal elders and leaders who testified today or who sat in the audience. Today's hearings are just a start of a dialogue we've come to deeply appreciate and depend upon. Please feel free to reach out to the subcommittee in the days and weeks ahead as we work to address the many valid concerns that we've heard today. Hearings adjourned.